When Ezra Klein claims that he and Charlie Kirk share a larger project, when Gavin Newsom urges us to continue Charlie's work, I think they reveal something more important than their individual politics. I think they reveal the project that has always united the American establishment across ideological divides: liberal nationalism. My term. Let's talk about it. Hey folks, I'm Tad Sturmer, an American scholar of resistance history at the University of Southern Denmark and the author of A Resistance History of the United States. I've been working through this concept for my book. I'm finishing up a chapter on violence in resistance right now. I'm trying to understand how resistance movements in American history keep getting interrupted, how so many resistance moments don't turn into resistance movements, resulting in structural, meaningful change. They get co-opted, they get defanged. And the answer keeps coming back to this peculiarly American mythology of exceptionalism. The idea that there is such a thing as the American project, the American experiment, the ever-perfecting, more perfect union. There isn't, right? That's a construct. It was invented by the Patriots to justify the rebellion, then turbocharged in the 1830s to hold together a union that was coming apart over slavery. It serves the same function today. It has always served. It paints opposition as un-American, and it protects the establishment. You might think that's good. You might think stability matters more than justice. You do you. But understand what you're choosing. The statement about Kirk from the center left are the modern versions of what bound establishment forces together in the First Republic. Yes, slavery is evil, but holding the Union together matters more. Now, the Federalists pioneered that argument, pushing for the Constitution. But those terms, union and slavery, are not parallel. One exists in a moral context, the other exists in mythology. So you have to make union outweigh the oppression of a fifth of the population. You have to invest it with some quasi-religious significance. You have to make it sacred. The American experiment, the last best hope, the city on a hill, cue sentimental violins. Plenty of people at the time saw through this. They understood that no abstract union was worth perpetual bondage that flew in the face of the language that established that union. But liberal nationalism won, as it always has in American history, by making compromise seem noble, making injustice seem temporary, making patience seem virtuous, until it didn't, until violence became necessary to reform that union at a catastrophic cost, a cost made higher every day by year after year and decade after decade of patience and compromise, which was really just disguised surrender. That's what I keep finding in my research. This isn't an ideological point. This is about historical facts and analysis. There are nationalists on the right and left who share far more than they differ. I'm not saying nationalism is inherently a bad thing. You come at that with your own values, but this is how nationalism functions within American political culture and to a certain extent within many political cultures. And it's all about these presumptions about America. What it should do, who it's for, and what it could be are fundamentally the same with right and left nationalists. They're both celebrators and exceptionalists who revere the founders, who excuse, let me know if this is familiar, brutalizers and racists as visionaries, whose real message speaks somehow heroically to our moment, to which we can relate. Isn't that exactly what they're doing with Charlie Kirk? Whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it's a good thing or not, it's the same process. So set aside the reality of his words and actions, assign him some abstract identity, practicing politics the right way, that immediately rehabilitates and elevates him. It's the same mental process that turns enslavers into champions of freedom, that transforms Indian killers into builders of democracy. Liberal nationalism has consistently stood in the way of meaningful structural change in American history, not because it explicitly opposes change, but because it insists that change must happen within the permitted framework of their American exceptionalism. It must affirm rather than challenge the fundamental goodness of the American project. The result? Necessary changes get delayed, they get postponed, making their eventual cost catastrophic. The Civil War. The violence of the civil rights movement. Each time, Liberal nationalists insisted the system would reform itself, that patience and working within the system would suffice. Each time, they were wrong. Each time, the delay made the price higher. And here we are again. The nationalists on the right are mobilizing, and the nationalists on the left are enabling them, not through agreement on policy, but through agreement on the fundamental project. They share a commitment to the performance of American democracy over its substance, the mythology of American exceptionalism over the reality of American oppression. When Klein and Newsom and others claim common cause with Kirk, they're not just being civil, they're affirming overtly that his projects and theirs are variations on the same theme. And we must demand, what is that theme? That American mythology has always served to deflect, delay, and defeat demands for real change? That's just the history. Prove me wrong. So the resistance question becomes, what exactly needs to be resisted? Is it just the far right? Or is it the entire framework of liberal nationalism that makes the far right possible, that creates space for them to operate, that treats their anti-democratic project as a legitimate part of the American experiment? Let's get on with Charlie's work, folks. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that liberal nationalism will always choose stability over justice. It will always privilege the abstract union over actual people to maintain the establishment of which they are part, first and foremost. And therefore, they will always find reasons to delay, compromise, and accommodate injustice in the name of preserving the American project that makes their lives possible. Until it can't anymore. Until the cost becomes so high that even the mythologists can't ignore it. And the question is whether we'll recognize that pattern this time, or whether we'll let liberal nationalism once again raise the price of necessary change to catastrophic levels, all in the name of an experiment that never really existed.